Hey, what's up everybody? Cameron here from Drums and Drams, and today I wanted to make a video for all of you about a topic that has become increasingly relevant very recently here, and that is this topic of my whiskey review philosophy, but especially as it pertains to media samples, being on certain PR lists, and receiving free perks from distilleries. Now, with only 1,500 subscribers at this point, I didn't think that I would really need to kind of tackle this or have a really well thought out stance on this issue. I figured this would be something that, maybe 5,000, 10,000 subscribers would become more of a relevant topic to Drums and Drams. But recently I've had a couple of distilleries reach out to me, kind of offering some free bottles or free samples or trips to their distilleries, all that kind of thing. And so I had to kind of put together in my head what I thought about this and come up with a stance. And I wanted to make a little video here about it because I just want to be clear about how I'm approaching these things with the channel as I continue moving forward. So this is going to first kind of talk about my, overall philosophy with whiskey reviews, which is something I've never really talked about, but I hope has become obvious with the videos that I've been putting out. And then I'm going to sort of transition and talk about how this relates to media samples and kind of the elephant in the room when you have distilleries asking you to make videos of their stuff or offering you trips down there, free bottles, and all of that kind of a thing. So let's start off now by kind of talking about the three things I think about when it comes to my whiskey reviews in particular and why I think about those. So the first is honesty, the second is fairness, and the third is transparency. Now, as somebody who came up in WhiskeyTube here before I started making stuff, I was watching stuff, and so I was watching Ralphie and I was watching whiskey.com with Horst Looning. And as a Scotch drinker, these were the channels that I gravitated towards, and that's because of their honesty. Now, Ralphie is very outspoken about things. He's got an amazing palate, but he tells it like it is, whether that's good or bad for the distillery, and he doesn't sugarcoat anything. I really appreciated that about his reviews because it helped me start to understand the landscape of the whiskey industry. It helps you understand what distilleries are thinking about, how that translates to the consumer, and when you have someone with a discerning palate and someone with knowledge of the industry like Ralphie who can kind of pick these things apart, it helps you to kind of better understand the holistic picture of things as it pertains not only to the quality of the whiskey, but the bottom line that these distilleries have to meet. The financials, the marketing things that are going on there, and the big multinational corporations that kind of control all of these things behind the scenes. Who are these people kind of answering to? And so Ralphie was great for that. As I was sort of starting to watch WhiskeyTube content. And then you go over to Horst Looning. He's a little less outspoken. He's really giving just a lot of tasting notes, but you know that if he doesn't finish his glass, that it's not something that resonated with him. And so these are a couple different approaches, but at the end of the day, they're honest approaches. And when I approach my reviews, the first thing that I think about is just being 100% honest, whether it's good or bad, but also trying to kind of explain these things, right? So when it comes to how I talk about whiskey, I like to talk about things subjectively and objectively, and then also good and bad. So if I have a whiskey that is peanut forward, as many of you know who watch my channel, I don't like heavy peanut notes in whiskey. Some bookers aren't this way, but a lot of the recent bookers batches are, and so you know that I'm probably not going to dig it. But if I say I don't like this because it has peanuts, I'm always going to follow that up by saying it's because I just don't like this. It's not my thing, and it could be for you. So I always try to be honest, but I also try to have this little bit of an explanation or caveat to go with it. Likewise, on the other side of things, if there's something objectively wrong with the whiskey, say it just feels like it wasn't blended correctly, and the development of the whiskey as it moves from front palate into the finish, if it kind of goes flat or dies off, that's a little bit more of an objective comment because it's something that a lot of people can pick up on, and you can't really get around the fact that we like whiskeys that have really nice development through the entire sip. And if a whiskey doesn't have that, it's pretty easy for all of us to kind of come together and say, objectively, we really don't like this release. I always try to explain those things, good or bad, and I like to have honest reviews. So that's number one. Number two is fairness. So this kind of ties in with honesty, but if you're going to knock something, or if you're going to hype it up, you have to be fair about it, right? So for instance, if there's a young distillery that's putting out their own distillate at 2 years old, really young stuff, but they're a startup, you know that they're aging things behind the scenes, but they have to get stuff out to the consumers because they have to be able to keep the lights on in the distillery. It wouldn't really be fair to attack that distillery for what that product is. You should make the comments. You should say, yeah, it's young, it tastes this way, it's underdeveloped, but I know because I've done the proper research that this is a young distillery and their plan moving forward is to have this actually be a 6-year product, which they're going to release 4 years from now. That is a fair review. A fair review is not just attacking something and leaving out that essential information. So that comes back to one word, which might be the most important word of all when I think of whiskey reviews, and that's context. You have to provide context for anything and everything that you're going to say in a particular whiskey review. Okay, so again, my first 2 things here that are important: honesty and fairness. And the final thing, as we get into this issue that the video is really about, is transparency. Transparency is something that we as consumers want to see from the whiskeys that are being produced, especially whiskeys that are being sourced. So if things are coming from MGP in Indiana, we want to see on the label distilled in Indiana, bottled by XYZ, whoever the person is bottling that. But if you leave that off, if you leave off distilled in Indiana, or you leave off distilled in Tullahoma, which is an even bigger deal for a lot of us, that is disingenuous through and through. I don't care who you are. And that amount of pressure and that amount of demand that we place on the producers, we should also place on the reviewers. So if a reviewer is receiving something for free, whether it's a sample, a bottle, whatever, they need to be upfront and honest about it. And I don't know that we really have an issue with that so much. It depends on the industry you're in. In the whiskey tube community, I feel like we always kind of know when people have been sent samples. But the deeper level of that, the deeper level of transparency, is that we need to be able to trust the reviewer to not be swayed by the fact that they received something for free. So names don't need to be named. Again, it's not a rampant problem in the whiskey community, but you go outside of this community to other things, and people are being paid to say nice things about certain products that they're reviewing online, or they're receiving them for free and they feel obligated to say nice things, or there's sort of the unspoken thing where they get it for free. They want to stay on the PR list to receive those free products in the future, and so they kind of dance around things. This is just a slippery slope. And so my philosophy that I've always had, and I've never really needed to employ this philosophy because I've never been contacted by anybody offering free things, has always been this. But recently, because I have been contacted, I had to kind of figure out how I'm going to talk about this to the distilleries reaching out to me. And if they're not okay with it, or if after I put out the review or feature their content or feature their product in some way, if they don't like it and then I never hear from them again, how am I going to deal with this? And so I had to kind of think about this a lot. A lot of people would say, don't take any samples, don't take any free products, because it is an unspoken contract. I don't think that's the case. I think it's actually better for everyone that we don't shy away from these conversations, that we don't shy away from the awkward interactions where, hey, you sent me this bottle, I'm telling everybody I don't like it, I provided context, I provided objective and subjective notes about it, I came to this conclusion, and it is what it is. I think we should deal with that. We should have these honest reviews, and we should be able to do it even with receiving free things. Let me kind of dig into it a little bit deeper. I think that not taking these samples, or not, free bottles might be different, that's a lot of whiskey, but samples to review, not taking the samples means that reviews don't get out there, especially if they're allocated products. Like, I don't receive allocated products here in Ohio. I don't wait in these lines. So I'll never be able to get a review of these things out. And I want to be able to get the reviews out because I think it's good for the community that we have more reviews of these products, more people talking about them, so that we can help people choose products that align with their palates and find the reviewers that they can really trust and rely on. That's going to be different for everybody. So if I don't take the samples, or Jason or Matt Porter or Bourbon Junkies, whoever else, I don't know who's receiving things, whoever else is getting these samples, if we don't put the videos out, then we don't have we don't have opinions out there, and I think we need more opinions. There's that reason. But the other one, again, like I said, is that we shouldn't shy away from it. We should be able to have these awkward conversations, and they shouldn't really be that awkward because not every product is going to be a home run. I think distilleries know that, reviewers, consumers, everybody knows that, and we shouldn't shy away from that. Now, one thing I will say, when it comes to like being paid dollar bills, being paid cash to say good things about something, that is just, there's no excuse for that. That's disingenuous. So we don't even need to dive into that. The one sort of middle ground to all of this would be like a single barrel product in my mind, because a distillery is probably going to send you a honey barrel. Let's just face it. Why wouldn't they do that? So if it comes down to receiving samples of single barrel products, I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But in my mind, I'd rather go pick that up off a shelf and get what a normal consumer would get, that same amount of risk of rolling the dice on which single barrel I receive. And that would be my way of approaching that. But I don't know how to make that work. And again, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But this whole video can be summed up by saying, I am going to take samples if samples are offered, but I will only take them if the distillery is fully understanding that they might get a review that is as bad as my review of Elijah Craig B521. And I point them in that direction. I point them to negative reviews and say, look, this could be your product. I'm going to do my best to be fair about it and provide context. I'll point them to this video I'm making right now and say, here's the way I'm thinking about it if you want to reference it again. And if all of those things are okay with you, yeah, I'll come down and visit the distillery. I'll have a tasting with you. We'll hang out because we're people. We want to have a good time and want to taste whiskey together. That's what this is all about, building community. But that doesn't mean we don't need to be honest about the products. It doesn't mean we can't be honest. I don't think these things are tied together, really. I think we can separate them and they can both be what they are. So that's all I've got. Thank you for listening to this rant. I know it went on a little longer than I wanted it to, but at the end of the day, honesty, fairness, and transparency, always with a basis of context and separating subjective from objective. Those are my goals. I will continue to stand by those. And the minute that I break from this, the minute that I start making false statements or dancing around things because someone has given me something for free is the minute that I will stop making videos on WhiskeyTube. So thank you guys for checking this video out. I really appreciate all of the support of the channel so far. And yes, there are collaborations on the way now with certain distilleries where I'm going to be able to visit, record some tasting sessions, take some awesome B-roll footage in their rick houses or, in the distillery itself. And I'm super excited about that. And I can't wait to get all that content out for all of you. So that's what it is. Thank you guys. I'm going to get out of here and like the video, subscribe, Patreon, all those good things. I'll see you later.